Good afternoon, everyone. In our previous lecture, we covered natural law in ethics in general, and now we should dig into an inquiry into philosophy and religion. So, once again, I would say that natural law asks a very powerful question. Are there moral truths that exist independently of human decisions? In other words, are some things inheritable, right or wrong, regardless of culture, time, or authority? Throughout this lecture, we'll explore where this idea comes from, how different thinkers developed it, and why it still matters today. Now, in order to understand natural law, we need to understand objective morality. Objective morality means some actions are right or wrong regardless of opinion. For example, is torture wrong? Is killing an innocent person wrong? If you believe the answer is always yes, then you already believe in some form of objective morality. For example, imagine a society where lying is completely accepted. Does that make lying morally right? No. According to natural law, lying would still be wrong because morality is not decided by society, it is discovered. Moving on to the definitions. Natural law is the idea that moral principles are built into the structure of reality and human nature. It assumes humans have a rational nature. We can use reason to discover moral truth. So morality is not invented, it is found. For example, why is stealing wrong? Is it just because the law says so? No. Even without laws, stealing violates fairness and trust, things rooted in human nature. That's why it feels wrong, universal. Now, before I move on, there's something that I'd like to tell you. You guys might have observed that in each of the slides, I always come up with a question, an example question. Now, since we are not interacting live um, with each other, I take a pause before I answer those example questions. So, whenever I ask a question, it's important that you respond to yourself to it so that you also have an understanding of how this entire thing works. And then definitely I'll give you an answer myself. So I hope you understand how I'm conducting these lectures here. Moving on. Talking about the core attributes, I think we've already covered this in our previous slides as well, in our previous lecture. Natural law has three key features. Universal, it's universal, uh, which means that it applies to all people at all times. Immutable, which is unchangeable, it does not change over time. Rational, can be discovered through logic. Now let's test this with another example. Is murder wrong only in modern societies? No. Across all cultures and history, unjust killing is condemned. This supports the idea that morality is universal. I hope you understand this. Moving on. Now, over here, the Stoics basically introduced the idea of logos, a rational principle governing the universe. They believed the universe is ordered and rational. Humans, being rational, should live according to this order. So morality is equal to living in harmony with reason. Another example, if humans are naturally rational, what happens when someone acts irrationally then? Like, for example, acting purely on anger. The answer is they go against their nature. According to Stoics, immoral behavior is irrational behavior, right? Talking about Aristotle's natural justice, uh, Aristotle made an important distinction. About natural justice, he said that it's universal and unchanging. Conventional justice is based on human laws. For example, driving on the left or right side is conventional. Justice and fairness is natural. For example, is traffic law natural or conventional? The answer is conventional. It varies by country. Another example, a follow-up question: is fairness natural or conventional? The answer is it is natural. Every society values fairness in some form. So I hope you understand this. So, like you see here, natural justice, it has the same validity everywhere. However, legal justice, which is indifferent in itself, but matters one, it has been laid down by law. It depends on the law of that particular country or what kind of rules and regulations have been imposed on its public according to the decisions of the authority of that particular region. So it's not universal. Okay. Now, again, we have Cicero here. I told you that he was a Roman statesman and a lawyer. Uh, Cicero defined natural law as right reason in agreement with nature. So he argued that laws made by humans must align with moral truth. If they don't, they're not true laws. True laws. For example, if a government passes a law allowing slavery, is it a valid law? Legally, yes, but morally, no. So, according to natural law, unjust laws are not true laws. So, this is the advantage that natural law gives you, that you can always challenge it. Not the natural law, but the other law which was imposed by the authority or by the government. You can always challenge it on the basis of the natural law. Okay. Now, in the medieval period, thinkers combined philosophy with religion. Two key ideas were there: divine foundation, which means that morality comes from God, and moral obligation, which means that humans are expected to follow it. Now, natural law basically becomes both rational and religious. For example, if morality comes from God, can humans still understand it? The answer is yes, through reason. That's why natural law bridges philosophy and religion. Talking about Saint Augustine and his eternal law. Augustine introduced eternal law, which means that God's perfect, divine plan governing everything. Humans participate in this through conscience and moral awareness. For example, why do people feel guilt after doing something wrong? The answer is Augustine would say it's because humans have an inner awareness of divine law. That is how they prevent themselves from indulging in sins or immoral behavior. So, this principle asserts that human laws must align with moral truths to be binding in conscience. Talking about Thomas Aquinas again. Now, Aquinas, as we've already discussed, is the most important natural law thinker. He said that humans use reason to understand God's moral order. He emphasized that moral laws are a part of human nature. We are naturally inclined towards good. Another example: why is it that humans seek happiness and avoid harm? Because these tendencies are built into our nature, and natural law reflects that, right? Now, Equinas basically what he did was that he divided the law into four types. He divided it into eternal law, which is God's plan, right? Natural law, which is human understanding of it or human reason, as mentioned here. Human law, laws made by societies or the legislators. Divine law, revealed through scriptures, right? For example, if a human law contradicts natural law, what happens? The answer is it loses moral authority. For example, is an applied example, a law banning basic human rights. Would it be valid? Legally, yes, but morally, no. Natural law always overrides it. Now we move on to different global faiths and its relation with natural law. Now, natural law is not just limited to the Western philosophy. Similar ideas exist in multiple religions, such as Islam. The concept of natural law is fitra, which is the natural human disposition towards good. Then, we use the word fitrat actually, so that is what it is, fitra. In Hinduism, it is dharma. In Christianity, it's divine moral order. So this suggests moral truths may be universal across cultures. For example, why do most religions prohibit murder? The answer is because it aligns with a deeper universal moral principle, not just cultural rules. So I hope you understand this. Let's dig deeper into this. Let's take the Judeo Christian context. In the Judeo Christian tradition, natural law comes from God. Two key ideas are the Ten Commandments, number one, which is basic moral rules, and Imago Dei. Imago Dei means image of God. So, meaning humans are made in God's image, so they have dignity in reason. Right? So, this word here basically means image of God. Right? For example, for instance, do not kill is not just a rule. It is seen as both a divine command and a rational moral truth. So I would ask you a question. Why do you think being made in God's image is important for morality? The answer is because it means humans can think, reason, and understand what is right and what is wrong. The Noahide laws in Judaism. In Judaism, there is an idea of universal moral laws called the Noahide laws. These are rules believed to apply to all humanity, not just Jews. For example, these include no murder, no theft, establishing of a justice system. Right? Now, a question: why would religions create rules for all humans, not just followers? The answer is in order to create a shared moral system so societies can function in peace and there are no major conflicts between them. Talking about Islam, fitrat and reason, it's fitra, but in our terms, we call it fitrat. In Islam, the idea of fitra means humans are born with a natural sense of right and wrong. So morality is not only taught, it is also inbuilt, which is built inside us. For example, uh, even a child knows that hurting someone is wrong without being taught. So, do you think humans are naturally good or need to be taught goodness? In Islamic thought, both are true. Humans have natural goodness, but guidance helps refine it, right? Further knowledge is still required because there are certain situations which are quite complex, and as a child, you may have a simple understanding of simpler situations, but when it comes to complex life circumstances, you do need enough additional knowledge and advice in order to take the right moral decisions. So that was the answer to that exam. Moving on to the Eastern traditions of Hinduism and Buddhism. Um, in Hinduism and Buddhism, the idea of dharma means living in harmony and with the universe and moral order. For example, doing your duty honestly, like being a fair teacher or honest worker, is part of dharma. Now, is doing your duty always the same as doing what is morally right? Not always. But in these traditions, true duty is aligned with morality, right? Entitlement. During the Enlightenment, thinkers shifted from religious ideas to human reason. They began focusing on rights instead of just duties. For example, instead of saying you must obey, they asked questions like, what rights does a person have? So, what is one right you think every human should have? Like, what comes into your mind when it comes to human rights? That what is that one right which has to be universal no matter what, and every human on this planet needs to have access to it. So we would say freedom, safety, and equality, and of course, education. Now, John Locke's uh, is a personality here, said all humans are born with natural rights, and I think we've already discussed this too in our previous lecture, that they need to have a secure life, liberty, and property. So, for example, no government has the right to take your life or freedom unfair, right? But why is it important that rights come before the government? The answer is because it limits government power and protects individuals, right? So what he said was that Locke shifted the focus of natural law to individual rights. He argued that in a state of nature, all humans have inherent rights that no government can justly take away. His work then formed the basis of modern liberal democracy and the social contract theory. Okay, another person here, Hugo Grotius. He introduced the secular law. Hugo Grotius argued that natural law exists even without religion. He said morality would still exist even if God did not exist. For example, fairness in trade between countries does not depend on religion, it's based on reason. So, do you think morality needs religion to exist? Grotius believed, I mean, you can have your own beliefs, but Grotius believed that morality can exist through human reason. Moving on to this. So this slide is about how modern ideas of rights started. In 1776, the United States said that all humans are basically equal, right? And have basic rights like rights of life, property, education, freedom, and all of that. Now, these rights basically don't come from the government. Um, these come from nature or God. So I'll ask you a question again. The question is that even today we believe freedom of speech is a basic right. The government did not create it. It's something every human deserves. So, do you think rights should come from the government or should they exist naturally for every human? So, this is something that you need to answer yourself. I would not be giving the answer myself. Do ponder upon this. Moving on to another phenomena, which is the modern era. Talking about the modern era, in today's world, natural law still influences how we think about justice, fairness, and ethics. It helps guide laws, especially in human rights and medical ethics. For example, as doctors, we follow ethics like do not harm, right? This idea comes from moral principles, not just written laws. So, the question is, can you think of a situation where doing the right thing is more important than following strict rules? I think we've already studied this before in the concept of triage. In triage, we understand prioritizing people. For example, there's a man who is around 65 years of age, right? And while he has chances of survival, there are five other people in line who are young, right? And they have lower chances of survival. So who would you prioritize? Now, a lot of people may argue that you need to leave the 70-year-old man behind and prioritize the young ones because eventually uh, they would be able to contribute to the society if you succeed in saving their lives, right? And then there's a lot of other reasons. This is something that you need to decide yourself and ask this question. Now, we've already discussed natural law versus legal positivism. When you talk about natural law, laws should be based on morality and fairness. Legal positivism, laws are valid just because the government made them. For example, if a law allows discrimination, natural law says it's wrong. Don't follow it. Legal positivism says that it's still law, you are bound to follow it. So the question is, if a law is unfair, should people still follow it? I think we've already answered this before in the previous slides. No. If it's morally wrong, if it's immoral, you can always challenge it, even if it was imposed upon you on the society, even if the society or the authorities are going to imprison you. What you can do is you can challenge it through peaceful protests and seminars, etc. And this is the advantage that natural law gives you. Talking about the global human rights consensus, today most countries agree that on basic human rights, organizations like the UN have created agreements to protect these rights globally. For example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that everyone has a right to education, freedom, and dignity. So, do you think all countries truly follow these human rights equally? No, they don't. Of course, they don't. We're almost wrapping up our lecture here. This is basically the evolution of natural law. We have already discussed this, how natural law developed over time, how its building blocks were built, and it basically changed over time. So, of course, it did not appear suddenly. It developed over time. It started off with the ancient philosophers who talked about reason, medieval thinkers connected it to religion, later thinkers like Locke linked it to rights, and finally it influenced modern human timelines. So, for example, ideas from hundreds of years ago are still shaping laws today. So, the question for you is why do you think that old philosophical ideas are still relevant? Think of it by yourself. So, this is your closing slide here. So, all I would say is that natural law is about fairness, morality, and universal rights that still guide us today. So, for example, whether in law, medicine, or daily life, we constantly make right decisions based on what is right or feels right. So, do ponder upon this lecture, and we shall continue this even further. I hope that this was interesting for you, and you'll ponder upon it, not just this and even the previous lectures that have been delivered so far. So, thank you so much.